Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project. Swan Song Project is a charity and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The service is free and it's available to anyone across the UK. So if you or anyone you know would like to access our service, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast features songwriters. This episode is the first episode I've ever recorded in person. We started the podcast during the lockdowns and the previously all been on Zoom, so this was a great pleasure to sit down in person with someone who's actually a big hero of mine, has been for a long time. This episode features Larry Love of the Alabama 3, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. Today I'm here with a big hero man, Mr. Larry Love from the Alabama 3.
How you doing, Ben? All right?
Yeah, good, thanks, man. Good to see you. This is the first Swan Song podcast we've done in person. So, now, COVID's a bit past us, we can start doing stuff like this again. And it's great to have you as the first in-person guest.
And Ben, you are in Brixton.
I'm in Brixton. I've come all the way down from Leeds down to Brixton to come and visit Larry.
You enjoying yourself?
I am. I like
Hospitality
it.
Cool?
Yeah, it's treating me well so far.
Let's roll, brother. Yeah.
So if anyone new to the Swan Song Project Podcast, every episode I have a different songwriter on, and we do it in 3 sections. So first, we're going to have one of Larry's songs. We're going to talk about how he wrote it. Section 2, I'm going to ask Larry for a songwriting tip. And then section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Larry in some way related to bereavement. So which song of yours have you chosen to talk to us about, Larry?
I'm sure any of your listeners who are familiar with Alabama 3 are aware that the Reverend D. Don't A.Y.N.E. Love passed away about 2 years ago. So song I've chosen is a song which we consciously made an effort with to make death somehow funky. And it's called Night Tripper in the Trap House. And it's off a new album called Step 13.
Cool. So we'll hear that now.
Waste no cellophane. I'm too wild to go back to the shop again. Burn it once, double it twice, yeah. I lick it with a clipper. I'm burning up right, yeah. Turn the radio up, let's do another dip. Fuck the general, he just lets the finger slip. Don't you worry, I say just both another hit. We'll be tripping and bagging like we always did. The night trippers in the trap house. The night trippers in the trap house. Now come down here dressed by 8 o'clock and it's 9. I told her to get back here, Mary, and get back in line. She's the last one to come out on the street tonight. I know that everybody's gonna be on my string, right? They coming from the left in the center of town. Ain't nobody come down here because they getting down with my ladies and they're all strong or with the beat. Hang on with me. The night trippers in the trap house. The night trippers in the trap house. The night trippers in the trap house. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Oh, don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Line the girls, line the boys, one to the left and one to the right. I'm coming walking through, I stand alone. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Preceded by torture. I'm coming home. All for me. I'm coming home.
Cool. So that was Night Tripper in the Trap House off the new album. It's a great album. I love it. Yeah, I'm really enjoying listening to it. And yeah, so anyone who's been following Swan Song for a while might know as well. We crossed paths a couple of years ago, just before D Wayne died, didn't we? And the National Lottery arranged a big surprise thing where I got up on stage.
Yes, Ben. It was bad enough. I was still a black.
Yeah.
The prepping of that particular night in Fibbers was really different. I was still a black, and I don't know. I had a load of ITV kind of bods kind of tutoring me in kind of the celebratory moment. But yeah, it was good to see you doing really well, man.
Oh man, it was a special night for me. Like, anyone knows, I've told this a few times, but like, and I'll put the link for the video in the description if anyone's not seen it. You can see me looking very surprised and getting on stage with Larry. But yeah, I was told that my friend had got me a ticket to see them. I was just there. I got there, all the cameras were set up, and I was like, "Cool, they're filming the gig. I might be in the audience of the next video." And the next thing gets me on stage. But anyway, I'll put that as a side note. So yeah, what can you tell us about Night Tripper in the Trap House?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jake, aka D Wayne, passed away, and we were kind of somewhat disturbed and very, very, very upset. But we also had an obligation to somehow represent what Jake would have wanted to happen from this scenario, and I'm sure that relates very much to kind of the people you've been working with, the Swan Song Project. It's kind of, there is very much a need. There's a balm in music which is really useful, whether that's kind of your favorite Chaz and Dave song at the end of your dad's cremation, or a song of White Doves a Dover from Granny, or Birds by Bob Marley, or something like that. Music is always a very important part of funeral scenarios. And having the opportunity to take that, well, it wasn't an opportunity, it was an obligation, because we had a tour booked and Jake died, and we went, well, do we do it? Can we do it without him? Or
Yeah.
And
what was that decision like? Because like he was like a big part of the band. Like some bands where a member dies and it's like the bass player in the background, but like he was such a big part of the Alabama 3.
Well, it was that big part, such a big part of the Alabama 3, that what we did within about, I think, a week of him being in the mortuary, we sent our harmonica player down, Nick Reynolds, who does death masks, to take a full cast of his face and hands, because we had this either stupid or beautiful idea to take him on tour with us as a sort of live mannequin. So we very much, I think, grabbed it by the bollocks, excuse my French, in the sense of embracing that. And what was very interesting was that in the music we'd done prior to Jake's death, Jake had done a whole spiel about this line going, "Don't cry for me as I lay dying," which at the time we went, well, that could be very useful for the new album if we're going to deal with this, you know. And Step 13, the new album on the album, is very much about us having to deal with him dying, how we go about that. And I know we were speaking earlier about, to be honest, how important death is in rock and roll. It's a 27 club or whatever you want to call it, you know. It's quite a pervasive kind of element. And it's something that's got to be kind of, you know, as a band, we have to deal with. So, yeah, basically, we kind of did a track, the last recording we ever did, and mixed it with a recording that was done about 6 months earlier. So there's 2 tracks which we compiled. One, the song starts with a kind of funky, there's a Little Peak bass line with some gospel samples on the top from Alan Lomax, where Jake was ranting about selling drugs and women on the front line, and then we switched it halfway through to the consequences of those decisions. And the song has that kind of switch in it. I don't know if we want to just introduce the wizard here.
Our third guest on this podcast.
Do you want to get on that wizard and just show the kind of so this section here is taken from Jake's probably last recording.
Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home. Don't cry for me as I lay dying. Sound the bell 3 times, I'm coming home.
Like, what would you do as a band if the lead singer had left you with that legacy? He knows what he was doing, you know, sort of thing. And we kind of went, well, let's work with it, innit?
Yeah.
We also quite weirdly embraced the moment of his passing. There was 4 of us in the hospital bed when he passed, and the piano player Orlando decided to record the sound of the life support machines being slowly turned off. Which someone says pretty disturbing, but with the amalgamation and the kind of the elements, I think we kind of gave him some dignity in that departure.
And it's one thing where, like, you knew him so well, like you knew this would be something he'd appreciate, you don't you? Like,
totally.
Yeah.
His life support machines were in the key of G, I think.
Was that his favourite key?
Probably, yeah. It was. So it was very much an amalgamation of, you know, these different elements, and also, like I said before, a kind of awareness in rock and roll. There are certain casualties. I mean, that doesn't necessarily apply to what you're talking about, the Swan Song Project, which is a different thing. But I would say Alabama 3 have sucked full at the kind of font of, you know, funerals. You know,
yeah.
First 3 letters of funeral are fun. You know. Put some fun back into it, Ben.
The fun back into funerals. Yeah. Was that you were saying about, so them 2 separate bits, and did you write new lyrics for this song, or was it all just stuff from that you found from what you'd recorded?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I sort of the night trip in the trap house. Basically, it's a song about me and Jake being naughty on the wrong side of town, and then he ends up in hospital. So it all fitted the narrative. But it'd been kind of created before as a kind of I think there's a Little Peak bass line and kind of trap beats and stuff like that. So we had it in the kind of ether anyway. And then Jake departing as he did give us a perfect excuse to mix that with his last recordings, As I Lay Dying, you know.
Yeah, it's very fitting. And how's this album been? Like, was a lot of it written before he died, or?
Not couple of tracks were written before, but most of it was done during COVID, which again imbued the whole album with a sense of what do we do with our intimations of mortality? You know, how do we deal with that? Particularly as musicians, you could either do the kind of grandstanding thing and get really sentimental and sad and stuff like that. I think having done enough funerals and been quite blessedly so, been invited to participate in, you know, a person's, you know, last moment on this earth. You know, we did Ronnie Biggs' funeral, we did Bruce Reynolds, we did Bob Crow from R&T, we've done numerous funerals. You know, we thought it was quite I thought appropriate us dealing with our, you know, Dwayne dying, and also the pandemic, the amount of deaths going on in care homes and stuff like that. There was definitely a certain resonance there. The last thing we wanted to do was to be a bit too self-indulgent about death, while everyone else's parents and grandparents are dying. And so, you know, and I didn't want the album to be some maudlin.
Yeah,
this is the thing, doing songs about death, you've got to, it's a fine line, you know what I'm saying, bro, between the maudlin and the celebration, which I think in the West we kind of go too much for the maudlin, where you go to look at Mexico and it's like, you know, you're jumping around having a laugh.
Yeah, it's a thin line, isn't it, of like, you're not wanting to disrespect or like also, you know, downplay the significance of the death and the grief, but you also want to try and celebrate the life. And
you want to uplift it because
and that's what the person generally wants. Well, people don't generally say like, oh, when I die, I want you to, you know, I want you to be really sad forever. They're like, I want you to celebrate the life and run with the good times.
This is why I'm very interested in the Swan Song Project and what you'll be doing, Ben, because I think there's always going to be that tension. You're going into a sort of care home or hospice or a horrible kind of situation. You're going to them in the middle of your grief now. Focus on what Granny was happy about. You know, and you have to, and I really respect your kind of bravery to go, come on, let's make this funky. It's going to be, Granny wouldn't have wanted it to be all like, you know, and that mixture between sentiment and kind of celebration is the, which at the end of the day, you know, so I'm very excited about talking, creates good music, that tension, because it's not the best premise to start a pop song, is it? Granny's dying, let's make it, get it in the top 10, you know.
But yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that before. Well, you're right, that is, and that in all the music, whatever the tension makes such a, you know, it's those, and it's one of the things what I think I love about you guys, what I know a lot of people like is that you mix different styles, you know, so it's like, it's not just, you don't know what you're going to get, you know, it's not like, oh, this is a country song, and this is how country songs generally go. It's like you guys always have that mixture of different styles, and similar, like, you know, you can have musical styles mixing and themes mixing, so like say the death and the celebration, and that is where interesting stuff comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean I sort of grew up around Aberfan, went to school in Aberfan, you know, and that whole area was just, there was an Aberfan mining disaster, and the whole of the valley was just imbued with a certain, you know, there was empty chairs missing in the classroom where kids would have been, you know, my age, who died with that landslide and that. So I've always had a kind of I don't know, some twisted attraction, or I don't know, it's in my genetics, but I've always seen, I've never feared death as a kind of spur to write, you know what I mean? And you know, you and unfortunately in rock and roll, or fortunately, you know, death from the 27 Club, Jim Morrison, you know, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, whatever. There's a, you know, it's a fine line we walk, and you know, the last thing Alabama Thew want to be is kind of stopping people doing rock and roll. If they do go, without giving them a good fucking party. And
it's one of the things, like, you know, we're saying there's so many musicians that die young, and it's the other thing with Collective Swan Song is that having their music live on. You know, like obviously Hendrix died a long time before I was born, but I feel like I know the man very well through listening to his music so much. So it feels like, you know, and music lives, you know, as I said on that video before, is that songs live forever, don't they? So we listen to songs that are hundreds of years old, and it's like that person's still here in some way.
And that, and you're right. And there's something about the crystallization of those short, you know, that small amount of time on planet Earth, which kind of gives their art, their work, a lot more kind of strength, you know. Billie Holiday dying young, her voice through the prism of knowing what she went through, when you're listening to it, you know that.
Yeah.
And that, and whatever people say, it does give it, you listen to Sid, Ian Curtis hung himself. When you listen to Closer or No Pleasures, it gives it a bit more of a kick, which is not. It wasn't easy on Joy Division or what came New Order because it's very difficult for them to deal with. But nevertheless, it freezes in time that person's heart.
Yeah.
And over years, their music can become almost sometimes a comfort to other people as well.
Yeah.
The death is at 27, death is at 77.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things that, like, when people talk about sad songs, like, one of the things that I always love about it, so like, I'm a big Leonard Cohen fan, and lots of people talk about, Leonard Cohen's really depressing. And one of the things that I look like, lots of his songs, they are really dark, and they talk about really, really dark themes. But one of the things that I love about it is that then, and it's similar with, like say, Ian Curtis and people like that, were like, they've been to those dark places, but then they've made something beautiful out of it. And they've given a gift from, they've been to those dark places, and then they've thought, I'm not just going to dwell here, I'm going to do something productive with something beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Swan Song that I say all the people I work with is like, it takes such bravery to be in that situation, knowing that your life's coming to an end, and then think like, actually, I'm not going to just feel sorry for myself. I'm going to do something positive that I can give to the world. And then
I will not go gentle into that good night. I will rage against the dying of a light and play a loud fucking guitar.
Yeah.
With a wah-wah as they enter those pearly gates.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Sorry for the interruption. Just want to drop a quick note in here to say that the Swan Song Project is a registered charity. If you're enjoying this podcast and you'd like to consider supporting us, there are several ways you can donate through the website. It all goes towards supporting more people living with terminal illnesses to write and record their original songs. If you'd also like to show your support for the podcast, we always appreciate any reviews you can leave us. Likes, shares, subscribes, all that kind of business. It always really helps. So if you'd like to do any of that, it's really much appreciated. Hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
One of the tracks I wanted to ask you about on the new album is the closing track, which comes after Night Trip on the Trap House, the Somebody Somewhere, which is just a beautiful song, and it feels very fitting for the COVID times. I think that it's just that one just really resonated with me.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's very much. I mean, I didn't. Again, the combination of Jake's departure, writing an album when the kind of lead man's just died, and with COVID, I was very conscious that we can't be having one of them. I when I saw those superstars doing a combined consume called Imagine, those fucking twats in LA, and Madonna in her bath, and Rose going, we're all in this together. No, you're fucking not. And I kind of, and I remember the first clapping we did for the NHS when it was coming up with the NHS, and I really enjoyed it. It did turn into a bit of a Boris fucking clapathon, which, excuse the, but seeing those frontline workers, what they were doing then, and the nurses and the sacrifices, nurses making care homes and hospitals, and the doctors, that bravery, and then they got a 1% fucking pay rise at the end of and so somebody somewhere, my ventilator breaks, and every breath I take, the oxygen tastes poisonous and cruel. But yeah, that's very much a kind of, but I didn't want to be too kind of obvious about, like a Coldplay thing. I love nurses. I mean, I just that I think there was positive things that came out of COVID in terms of our social interaction, and I really hope that some of those sentiments remain strong now. And one was caring and loving each other, some support. It's a bit of you can see now the establishment are quite quickly removing that sentimentality and turning into some brutal, as I say, the pay rises are kind of that was really rude. I thought that was a very disappointing kind of end to the old. Well, it's not ended, but But yeah, I mean, thanks for that. I mean, that was a tough song to write because I didn't want to be too.
Yeah, I mean, you got the balance just right on that, and it's one of the, I don't know. There's something about. So it's the chorus. What's the first line of it?
That's when I want you with me. That's when I need you there. Yeah. That's where I want you to whisper in my ear and tell me somebody somewhere still cares. Yeah, I mean, it's what you're involved in. It's not all about I mean, I'm talking about Alabama 3, saying, "Yay, death's great and funky." There's also that balance with, again, a sensitivity that you do need to either metaphorically or physically put your arms around someone and whisper in their ear saying, "You're all right." COVID threw up a kind of, I think, a need or a realization amongst us humans that we need to love and hug each other sometimes. Those horrible moments when, in those care homes, you just see people, suffer dementia just through the windows and not having that tactile kind of, or that whisper in their ear, which is something that I think I was thinking about Swan Song Project during that time, and how would you go around kind of, did you find that problematic? You telling me before you did Zoom call.
Trying to we did some on the phone as well. Obviously, like, a lot of the people we work with of the older generation who might not be tech savvy. So we did some over the phone, which was challenging, but you may do as best we can. But I think that song, that it's where it just grabs one of those like real, just that knowing somebody somewhere still cares. Like just I don't know, just capturing those that sentiment. And it just felt very relevant at the time.
But then it doesn't sound like Coldplay, does it?
No, it doesn't sound Coldplay. That's the beauty. I think it's that there's something about, like, which I think Coldplay do a lot of. It's the very general statements, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which then, like, it's nice. It's like, oh, well, sing along in a stadium, but it doesn't really feel like it means anything. It feels like, where something like that, like, to whisper in my ear and know that someone still cares. It's like, that's what you relate to that.
What you're basically saying is that Coldplay within the stadiums, I would be with you in Fibbers in York with 12 people there. And you'll be able to hear my whisper because there's no fucking crowd.
There's more than 12 there. But it's great, man. It's a great album. I guess one of the things I'm really interested in is how writing this album was compared to previous albums in the light of D. Wayne's passing, and how you feel about the Alabama 3's songwriting going forward. Like, is it going to be very different? Are you going to use more of D. Wayne's previous recordings, or like, have you thought much about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's not. We were aware that he was ill, so it wasn't that surprising. And also, as well, I know, he was a massive fan of Burroughs and Miles Davis and Hendrix and all that. So he wouldn't have wanted a kind of to be perpetually in a maudlin state. I mean, I was quite interested in how New Order dealt with Ian Curtis's departure. They went totally popped a load of pills. Arthur went to New York and did Acid House, and there's interviews with him now, but we didn't compute it at the time. And I think Alabama 3, we still haven't computed him dying, and we put him in the context of going to work with that. But what it's given us, and there's a real, I think, strange beauty about loss, particularly if it's a fellow musician. I mean, that sounds a bit poncy because it's saying that people not in a band don't have the same sort of grief, but certainly don't want to, perpetuate this kind of thing that all the songs are predicated on his departure. And to be honest, Ben, D. Wayne was a fucking pain in the arse sometimes in the studio. He'd come in, we play, mommy. So, no, I mean, and some would say there's a lot more harmony in the band at the moment because that Glaswegian is drinking fucking mojitos with Elvis. So,
I like that you said that as well. Like, that's another one of the things, but I think, like, it's a common misconception. Like, it's like, everyone's perfect when they've died, whereas, like, it's not the case, is it? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with saying, Well, we were discussing earlier, weren't we? Can you write a drill beef track for your granddad who hates his neighbour down the road? I think that should be accepted for the Swan Song Project. There's a policy we've not decided upon yet.
Those fucking parking restrictions kill me.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
But yeah, I mean, as I say, when you order, you move on. You kind of, we could give up the ghost and do whatever, or honor Jake's departure with, keeping it rolling, because that's what he wanted. I mean, I mean, the thing with Alabama 3 is we are members of the First Presbyterian Church of Elvis the Divine, which believes in divinity. So he's not really dead. He comes, talks to me every night on the old dog and bone, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Still, presence will still be felt, I'm sure, for a long time to come. That's brilliant. That's really interesting, Larry. Let's move to section 2 now, shall we? So I ask my guests to share with us a songwriting tip that might be useful to other songwriters. So what would your tip be for us, Larry?
My songwriting tip would be, and this does relate to the use of language, that if my songwriting tip is just purely for lyric writers. Yeah. We'll write the words down. We have a variety of what used to be able to be done on pen and paper, we can now do on phones. And I think the great thing with technology and the exchange of information very quickly is that you can be, you should always be listening to, without being an eavesdropper, to chaps on the back of the bus. Always those snippets of random conversations. There was some, I think I was reading something about John Updike or something, but it was about where writers get inspiration from. But if you all the time keep your ears open, and if you don't have a phone, a pen and paper, you can hear phrases, it might be on the radio. Always be attuned to that use of language from all kind of sides, Yeah. Make sure, whether it's 3 and I remember Bjork moaning about the fact she get these ideas come to in the middle of the night, but she would force herself to get out and go. Or never underestimate what your imagination can bounce off from random conversations with other people, and write about it. And don't feel embarrassed to have a chat with someone and go, 1 second, can I just write that down? They might go, what the fuck, are you some fucking fed or something? You go, no, you just said I had a beautiful lyricism to it, which in the end of the day, it kind of staves off the loneliness of being a writer. Yeah. Basically, at the end of the day, just go and sit in the fucking Wetherspoons in the corner and drink there all day and just fucking listen to what I was talking about. And there'll be some conversations there. You go, that's a chorus hook. That's a little start of a lyric there. Yeah, and the minutiae of people's everyday existence is what fuels, your artistic energy.
That's a really good tip. I really like it, and it's something which again feels very relevant to what I do with Swan Song. Like people often say, "How do you write?" And people say like, "Oh, I'm not going to write about. I've not an interest in that." So that they start talking to them, and they'll say and so then my job is just like spotting those things. What you're saying, you're spotting with other people. It's like then you just telling people like, what you said there. That's beautiful. That'd be a great lyric.
Totally, and the most beautiful thing if you do, because I've had conversations with people going, they go, I'm not fucking interested in all I do. I'm a plaster or something. And I said, what that consciousness is so important to me as a writer. Yeah. Because I don't, and it's not something I'm better than you, but I certainly don't want you, because you're a plasterer or you're an electrician or you're a nurse or that, don't put me, I need that interactivity. That's what makes good music, and to find those beautiful couplets does not often always come from sitting in your Hampstead mansion with Chris Martin worrying about kind of is Gwyneth goop fucking vaginal cream any good for his hair loss. You need to get out and about and deal with, and and to have a arena which you're going into where people are grieving for their loved ones or whatever. And I think to be in a situation, you encourage them to go, what? So Uncle Bernie was, did that? He played football back in 55. That's the start of a song there. Yeah. Played football back in 55 with Nobby Styles, all that kind of shit. Those songs make, country and western is a great example of what you can do with what people think are very small details become grand gestures. Yeah. As opposed to Coldplay, which is grand gestures.
And again, it's what we're going back to with Somebody Somewhere Still Cares. It's that it's what people say, and it's things that relate. It's real details, real lives, real stories, and then it makes it accessible to other people.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking what you guys do really well as well is like you get that from real people, but you do a lot of sampling of lyrics and stuff for previous songs, don't you? So I guess that's another avenue of doing that, is listening to old tracks and taking them from there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, at the same time, Alabama 3 very much avail ourselves of the recordings of a fellow called Alan Lomax, who was sent out by Franklin Roosevelt to record all stuff in America, all folk kind of formats in America, and that's just been released about the last 10 years for public kind of consumption. But the kind of opportunities in those recordings to remix them and to reapply them to a different context is good, you know.
Yeah.
And one has to look backwards and forwards and left, right, and centre for kind of little trigger. End of the day, kids, it's triggers, you know. Keep yourself surrounded by triggers.
Yeah.
As long as no one pulls it.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah. How often do you write? Are you always writing, or do you have phases where you're like, I'm going to sit down and write some songs now? Do you write a bit all the time? Or?
I write all the time. I mean, it's a 24-hour job, I think. If you're serious about lyric writing, you know, music, you know, you have to have your antennae open 24/7. I don't understand musicians who are going, right, I'm just going on holiday now, I'm having a break. It's like, there's no break.
Yeah.
There's no break, really, if you're a writer. You know, you should always be, I know it's exhausting. When I ate it, it's like a wormhole. This worm goes in there and you're just wriggling around for ages until you kind of feed it some rotten cabbage. But, you know, it's never a, one should always like look to every aspect of life, both bad and good, for, you know, inspiration, and embrace it all.
Yeah. And
if you are responsible as a writer and you believe that you have some gift or whatever, and then take that seriously, you know. Don't do too many drugs, don't drink too much, don't fucking, you know, take your job seriously, you know.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah. And you do, like, so you do Alabama 3, but you do some other collaborations as well. How do you find, like, so you do O'Connell and Love, which she's got a new album out as well. Brendan O'Connell's also done the Swan Song Podcast, so let's go back and listen to that one.
All right, Bren.
Yeah. But like, are you just always writing, and then it's like some things come out for Alabama 3 songs, some things go O'Connell Love, some things go, and we're going to talk about one of your solo albums in a minute as well. Or do you feel like when you're writing, do you know like this is going to be an Alabama 3 piece, this is going to be something different?
Yeah, it's quite interesting you saying that, because Alabama 3 said Nick Reynolds, the harmonica player, son of Bruce Reynolds, was moaning a couple of years back, going, you fucking, also, you give all your best lyrics to O'Connell and Love. I'm like, Nick, I'm not going around compartmentalising like that's for that. No.
And you don't know, do you? Like, you don't, you know, do you feel like you know when you've got a good lyric or a good song, or is it?
I don't know. I'm always paranoid. You know, Wizard would tell you he was pressing the buttons before that. I'm yes, I come across as narcissistic and arrogant, but you see me walk out of that microphone booth there, and I'm a man in terror, self-loathing. I never know.
Yeah.
Somebody when they turn that volume, put some auto-tune on, it works. When in doubt, get the Wiz to put the auto-tune on. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's you know, I mean, I suppose I listen from country western to kind of, you know, drill and everything in between. So but apparently I'm too old now to do drill. A Wizard says I just do dad rap.
Very badly.
I like, yeah, like, what is it? Dad bods have become a real thing out there. I keep seeing dad hats advertised now, so dad rap might be the next one.
Yacht rock, dad rap.
I like it, yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I always like, I don't know, I've heard lots of musicians talk about those kind of things of like, never, you know, like the song was the biggest hit, they almost didn't put on the album and things like that. It's like, it's so hard to judge until, and it's like, because I guess you're not the judge of it, it's the audience is the judge of it. But I guess it depends how you.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a certain number of platforms which to kind of, you know, develop ideas and that. But yeah, I mean, I think these days as well, I mean, all the youngers I know, musicians, all of them are in about 5 or 6 different bands. What's really good with social media, internet, Spotify, whatever you want to call it, youngsters are learning such a wide variety of styles from an early age.
Yeah, which
is really, so that you can they'll be playing fucking buzzsaw kind of Kurt Cobain guitars, and then they'll be listening to kind of, you know, some trap music or something, doing the same kind of shit. And that's what's kind of good at the moment, the breakdown in genres and styles, which, youngsters don't seem to have the blinkered kind of compartments we had back in the day,
And I imagine just you saying that then, the amount of how young they're raised on music technology now as well, and being able to use I can do very, very basic editing, but I bet most musicians now are raised on doing that. So the the kind of stuff you guys do, if you want to sampling and moving tracks around, so the music's just gonna. I'm not that old, but when I started, it was still very much just basic guitar.
Yeah.
If I could get a cheap microphone in the middle of the room, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But I bet most musicians in schools now are way more fluent in music tech stuff.
Yeah, well, like my son's 12, he can play them little pads and make a trap beat on that one. You know what I mean? And it's quite interesting how guitar players are getting a bit sidelined now because all the drum machines are coming up. But I think that'll balance out a bit. And I'm really excited about what young people do music-wise now. In terms of taking on board those different styles and making them work, being proud of going, I'm in a jazz band, I'm in a punk band, and I'm in a reggae band, and I'm in, without devaluing their thing as a musician. I think a lot of the roles we have as musicians are predicated by the industry anyway, going, well, you're in that sort of band, don't you? That sort of stuff.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that why I fell over you guys is that it felt like you guys kind of didn't play by that rule at all. It felt like, at first you guys were like, gee, what's this? That kind of, I guess one of the things having the balls to do that, and I don't know, it's something.
And then realising that having the balls to do that meant we would go nowhere. Hype to Britpop, Alabama 3 decide, fuck the UK and Union Jack. So I know that on guitars, we're going to pretend we're American. Of course, there was Alabama 3, mixed country western with techno.
Yeah.
So the enemy was 1 out of 10, a universal waste of time. Never forget that. It was so sad.
When was that?
Don't know. It's for our review for the second album, The Pest.
Oh,
no, monumental waste of time. 1 out of 10.
Oh, jeez. Don't know what I'm talking about.
Who's standing now, motherfucker?
Yeah. Well, that feels like a good point to switch into section 3 of the podcast. So, this is, I asked my guests to share with the songs meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. So obviously we've been talking about bereavement quite a lot during this podcast already. I've asked you to choose a particular song that means something to you. So which song have you chosen first, though?
It's a song off my first solo album called Ghost Flight, and the track called My Dying Bed. And it was the first lyric is, she lay like Billie Holiday, flowers at her head and at her feet, the lamplight through the shadows back to the dark end of the street. The minister was mumbling, I swear I saw that preacher smile. She's coming through the ether to me, talking and walking in the light. And she said to me, dance around me, dance around my dying bed. Will you ghost gonna come up close and lay your sweet hands upon my head? And that was probably the first time I'd addressed kind of mortality. But there was a beautiful photo of Billie Holiday, an open cast kind of funeral. She looked absolutely gorgeous, And that kind of really resonated. I was also listening to Van Morrison's TV Sheets at the time. He's going, she's coming through the ether, comes through the ether, But and my brother-in-law at the time had hung himself in Cardiff Central Park, and it was kind of a way of writing through that,
Yeah, it's a powerful song, and that was like 15 years ago, wasn't it? That one.
Yeah. I've been long drenched in the glamour of death.
Yeah.
And but it's, again, hopefully it's not navel gazing kind of.
Yeah, no, and again, it's what we've kind of talked about a lot. Is it's like dance around my dying bed. It's the same message we've been talking about, isn't it? Of like, we in the West, in this so-called civilized West or whatever, there should be more weeping and wailing and making a noise, banging pans and jumping up and down and kind of, which I think the Swan Song Project, I'm so said it before, this is probably one of the most exciting interviews I've done. And I mean that because, I'm drenched in death, and, death stalks a disco. There was a disco in that fucking, there's a dance floor in the cemetery, you know what I mean? Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, mate. It's like, it's so interesting having these conversations with people. And like you say, it's just people don't have these conversations enough. And I think there's, like I say, the music just makes it, I don't know, I think it makes it palatable for a lot of people. And a lot of people, if they just
I mean, like, as people probably listen to podcasts for you anyway, but like most time people like might not want to listen to podcasts about death on itself, but it's like, oh, I want to hear a bit about songwriting as well. It's kind of like makes it a bit more accessible for people. And I think the more conversations like this, the more comfortable people get having them and sharing their own experiences, and people will relate to the stuff you talked about today.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you have the option. You can have the C of E option, which is all kind of traditional, nothing against Catholics, the Church of England, anything like that. But that uptight, kind of very stentorian, boring, fucking, we're all going to listen to, once. Whereas what I think Swan Song Project, what you're doing in terms of actively getting involved with the relatives around there and constructing a narrative and a kind of hooks around the imminently departing persons, that's going to make I can imagine it can be quite tough. You going, let's make a kind of song about this. I mean, I hope are people finding that useful, or you getting some dirty looks of? Do you still get? I mean, do you find there's prejudice, some people, that you're devaluing the grief process?
No, I've not, to be honest. I thought I would. Like when I had the idea, and it was like maybe a year before I moved on it, because I was sure like, oh, there's going to be a reason why people won't want to do this. People will find it offensive in some way, things like that. I thought, well, I'll see how it goes, and I've not really had any negative backlash from it. Like I say, it's not for everyone. Some people, obviously, and like what I like with most of it is people who think they're not creative, and like, people. I get some people are like, oh, I love music, but I've never been.
I love them because they're the most creative ones. They've got those snippets, they've been writing little fucking books.
And again, sometimes it just takes that little bit of confidence boosting, and I'm like, like we were saying earlier, like they'll say something, you're like, that's the one, isn't it? That would make a really good chorus. And like, would it? And you're like, it would, yeah. And then they're like, oh, so it just kind of gives them that boost of like, yeah, actually maybe I can do this. And then when they finish the song, then that's the biggest joy, really, is when you.
And I'm sure you can imagine there's nothing more unifying than a kind of music, a shared ownership of a musical project, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get them involved. There's a song I did with his member of Alabama 3, Reverend B. Atwell, but his mum sadly passed during COVID and stuff. But she'd done some recording on it of the song "How Great Thou Art." But we did a recording on an album, an acoustic album, and B said, I want that song played at a funeral in West Norwood, Crem. Ben, the fuck, everyone, they didn't give a shit about it. When that come on there, and her singing, good, how great, because I'd recorded it, and everyone was just like half laughing, half crying. It was amazing, Yeah. And let's push, let's put, with music, it will push you happiness and push your sadness. I mean, the two of them together, quite confusing, isn't it?
Yeah,
the emotions you're dragging up are very confusing. You go, we can do a foot tap in there, or a ballad or whatever. It's going to be confusing. But I really, appreciate and respect what you're doing in terms of drag. I do think you're a wise man to the fact that that's where the cold face of good music is, though, isn't it? You're just going around. And some cemetery stalker. I'm going to write a song about your granny. But you're not doing that, you Ben.
Yeah. It's one of the things I still find it weird. Like, sometimes I find it hard getting complimented about it because, like,
because you are.
And there's other things where, like, because obviously, like, it is good for the people who do it, but for me, like, I find it fascinating. It's like, for me, like, I find writing my own songs boring now. I'm kind of bored with myself. I'm more interested in writing songs for the people.
You are the vessel, the conduit. You are the filter.
Yeah, and that's what I love now. I love hearing different people's stories and helping them shape something.
Well, that relates to what I was saying before about any songwriting tips that you're getting used now to taking any little snippets and you turn that into you can take those little one line and that can become a song,
Yeah.
And in terms of, as you say, grieving relatives going, I've got nothing in me, stuff like that, and they just give you one story about, I was in the playground when I was 5 driving a red motor car or something, or a red, you know what I mean? Those little things, those little intimate details make the track happen,
And it's like you're saying then about the humor in them. That's one thing I love as well. People seem to love that. Like, we'll put something that's a little funny story or like a little in joke. That's what I love, the in jokes. If someone says, like, we had this thing where like we'd say this every now and then, and it really cracks up. And you put it in, and someone's like, but it won't make sense to anyone else. Like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if I play that to someone and say, what's that mean? It doesn't matter if the people who the song's written for, they get it and it makes them laugh and they're like, that's exactly it.
And have you got over that? Are you kind of a lot more, not blasé, but a bit more kind of confident in terms of going, don't worry about it not being. It should be funny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
tell them,
And also,
there's nothing wrong with humour in the Middle East.
yeah, nothing wrong with it.
When Daddy was 9, he fell off the tree wading in the river because he'd been drinking iron brew with his sister. And all, you know.
That's it. The more of that stuff, the better.
Yeah.
And same with like you were talking about there with your friend's mum and like the recording people's voices. So like I always encourage people. Like we don't obviously not going to make anyone sing, but I always encourage people to do it, no matter what their voice is like. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not a very good singer. It's like it doesn't matter. Like for your kids to hear your voice, even if it's not technically a great vocal performance, then like
that's so important.
So,
I mean, go reference what I said about Alan Lomax before. He was recording lots of folk idioms. What you're involved in, your Swan Song Project involved in, that's recording folk idioms. Do you know what I mean? Because there's the emotionally charged atmosphere in a fucking an hospice or whatever, or it's gonna be. People's voices are going to be, fucking peak or the depths of kind of something, which is going to sound wicked on a sample 10 years later.
Yeah.
When you're doing Christmas 10 years later, you press that, you're like, oh God, that's what rolls.
That's it. Yeah, we'll have an Alabama 3 Swan Song album in like 10 years or so. Man, well, yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate all the kind things you said about Swan Song and the support. And as I said, I've been a big fan for a long time, so it's great to talk songwriting with you. Thanks for coming on.
Let's put the fun back into funerals. Swan Song.
Larry Love from Alabama 3, ladies and gentlemen. And check out the new album, Step 13. It is brilliant. And check out the previous albums if you've not heard them, because they're great as well. And thanks for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode soon.